Hi, Susie.
Good evening, Jean. Good evening, Deborah. How's you?
Oh, oh,
Hi.
hi.
Good to see
For the
you.
information.
Sorry?
Thank you, Jean, for the link.
Oh, I sent Deborah the link. She didn't have
Yeah.
the link, Susie.
Oh, thank
Oh,
you.
she sent you a message, but I thought you might be up to here, so
I'm really sorry about that. Yes.
All right. I think we need to update our computer.
Oh.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi,
Good
Bridget.
evening.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Liz. Hi, Bridget.
Hello.
Hi, Liz.
Hello.
Hi.
So, Susie, is it the same link every week? Is it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And Liz, I apologise. I've just seen your message, but I didn't get time to input
Yeah,
it.
that's fine. No worries.
Yeah. Now then. Oh, Anne, we're waiting for, aren't we?
Yeah.
Wonder if she's held up again. Anyway, how have you got on this week?
All right. Yes. Up and down some days.
Right. And are you better, Bridget?
Yes,
Bridget.
I'm feeling much better today.
Good.
Feel like things lifted and I'm feeling more normal, which is great. I quite like feeling normal.
It does help.
It does, doesn't it?
Have you
I
not
don't
been?
know if it helps everybody else. They're sort of thinking, oh, I kind of liked you the other way.
I think
boss them around again now. It's like,
yeah, that feeling you get when you know you're better from a cold or whatever, and you just suddenly feel right is a lovely feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit. I noticed when I went up for the walks, even with Oz, it's a bit like it's like butterflies in your belly, thinking, "Oh, life's okay again," because it does feel like you're going to get over when you're in the middle of it. It's horrid. I mean, I don't do being unwell that well.
No.
So I'm a bit like that, Bridget. I've got no patience with myself. That's my.
Now, fine. Once I was asleep. When I was asleep, I knew that was it. But the waking bit was. Yeah, I have slept a lot, so that's good.
I think that's the thing that's always, after 5 years of my having done my nutrition and naturopathy, that was the thing that actually persuaded my husband, because he hates being ill. So he said to me, "Tell me what to do," and then he just did it. Castor oil pack, coffee enema, the lot.
And it works.
And it works. And ever since then, he says, "Tell me what to do." So,
well, I just wanted to say, this is a book that obviously never read, but had it.
Oh, you got it. Right, lovely.
Wow.
This one is The Honeymoon.
Oh, yes, I fancy reading that one.
So I've got these for anybody. I can only read one at a time.
Yeah.
I think obviously the Biology Belief is more his scientific book. This one is actually a book on relationship, which he obviously gets into. He never thought he would, but so yes, Mr. Lipton.
Yes, is it sort of talking about the effect of a relation, a loving relationship on the body's cells, or?
Well, it's like that, but it's about it's a bit like you feel like you're predestined with the opinion that you've had, that you're going to have the relationship that you have, and that plays itself out to a certain degree till you actually understand that you have total control of your belief system and how that impacts the rest of your gene pool, really, and how you interact with the world and your vibration and all those things. So yes, life wasn't going that well till he suddenly had his epiphany, and off he goes then when he realized he internalized what he'd learned by looking at cells. So the thought sequence of how the thoughts affect the cell biology. Yeah. So.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I really must get it then, because that would be fascinating.
Yeah. So he just wants to be happy. Who doesn't?
Yes, indeed. That's very true. Yeah. Any thoughts about last week?
Not that I can think of. That's
No.
Yeah.
it's just so much to take in for my little brain.
Well, it was lovely to go back through the slides, because, you know, I guess as we process it, you know, there's only so much you take in each time.
Yes, that's me, Bridget.
And you know, it's funny, like the nuances. I think, you know, we kind of feel like we know it all, but really it's actually the emotion. It's not that, no, I mean, is you sort of know some of this information, but it's actually practicing it is, you know, knowing why you need to drink more. You know, your body knows it needs it, but sometimes you know, you don't give it what it needs. So that was good. Yeah.
Yes, I've been more disciplined drinking this week.
Good.
Than normal. I mean, I usually drink a lot, but I've drunk more this week because I've what I call discipline myself. After what you said, your cells need it, so I thought, get on with it.
Well, I've
How
noticed.
much is it again? Sorry, Bridget. How much is it again, Susie, that you drink? Is it 4 litres?
No, 2 litres, 4
2
pints.
litres.
Yeah, but in the summer you'd probably want up to 3, 2.5, 3, because you're sweating more.
Of water.
Of water. Depending on what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I think it's with the boys, because they're studying or working at home. As a joke, you know, I got these steins, you know, possibly, I don't know, I can't remember. They've been here a few months, but while I was ill, Damien, because he didn't want to do the running up and down like I do, so he filled these steins with water and gave them to them each day, you know, as they went up the stairs.
Yeah.
And they remarked that actually, because there's that much liquid there, not that it's a challenge for lads, but like they did drink a lot more this week because it's a much bigger vessel than giving you know, a small cup. Because, you know, they may not want to go downstairs to get themselves a drink, but once it's there. So that's, and also somebody else has, it's like a beaker, but it says, you know, I don't know how many hours on, but you have to drink so much per time and stuff. And I suppose it's a visual as well, if you're not used to drinking a lot, you know, just the helpers, you know. Yeah.
Yes, it is helpful. What is that, like a flask, the stein, or?
Well, Stein is bigger. No, I think it's about 2 pints.
Yeah, it's bigger than a pint.
Or a litre.
Is it a litre?
Probably be a litre.
Then, yeah. Yeah.
That's 1,000 millilitres, isn't it? And a pint is 600. So
Yeah.
2 would be 1,200.
But yeah, well, it seems to work. So that's something we, you know, we'll keep going while they're at home. Don't think they're allowed steins at school with other things.
Yeah.
It's 2 pints. I've just checked.
Is it 2 pints in a stein?
2 pints, yeah.
All right.
Well, they had at least 2 of them a day, so they've done all right. So
that's 2.8 litres then. So that's excellent.
Right. Wow. I must look into those. feel right in the brain now.
Little cells.
Yeah. Well, today I'm probably going to bore you to death with water. Well, I hope not. But
No.
it's today's topic is water.
We're on a learning curve, Susie.
And yeah, and I hope it will be inspiring rather than anything else. So this always takes a minute to go for some reason. So we would be so lucky, I think, if we could access more spring water. We used to have a lovely spring in Ackworth, down in the fields, and the farmer got fed up with not being able to farm that bit of land, so he diverted it, unfortunately.
Oh.
But yeah, so we no longer have that. But the lovely thing about spring water is that because it flows through the ground, and as it moves, it creates a vortex as it flows, which energizes the water. So they reckon that's supposed to be much better for us. And the temperature, obviously, that it comes out at is room temperature. So it's trying to drink as much, or sorry, ground temperature that you can bring up to room temperature. But if you can try and drink as little heated water as you can, because in a way it changes the nature of the water. So if you can keep water in a flask that will, keep it fairly ambient, so not cold, not really hot, but just room temperature, and then sipping. So if with your so we had a little chat about a little review at the beginning. What we're going to have a look at is how the body uses water and how dehydration can cause a lot of discomfort and even illness in the body. And there's even a philosophy where, if you're fully hydrated, you can be in touch with your body, your spirit can be in touch with the whole of your body and inhabit it. And so there's a fantastic book by an Iranian doctor called Batman Gelish, and I'm going to talk about him a little bit more later, who wrote Your Body's Many Cries for Water. And he actually wrote it after a spell in prison where he was unable to treat patients with anything other than water. And it's very cheeky of them, because he was in prison supposedly for speaking out of turn in the sort of dictatorship that he was living in. So they popped him into prison and then decided that he could treat the patients because they didn't actually have a prison doctor. But one of his main quotes is, "You're not sick, you're thirsty," and to not treat the body with medications, to go for water first. So if we just look at the body's organs in turn, our brain, we've got 2% of the body weight there, but it receives 15% of your body's blood supply. And of course, an enormous constituent of your blood is water. And what they found is that the more dehydrated you become, the less able you are to think clearly. And they also know that a depressed state, in a depressed state, the brain can shrink up to 40% due to dehydration. And so one of the things that happens when you're dehydrated is that your body starts to produce histamines, and that can contribute to a huge effect on your neuropsychiatric state and create depression. And so if we have a quick look at mast cells, they're associated with depression because when your mast cells are producing histamines, that causes you to release these pro-inflammatory cytokines. And these cytokines are an inflammatory response to dehydration, and they affect your brain function. And the plaques that they find in the brain are part of these cytokine inflammation response. But there are several brain effects or cognitive effects from that. For example, your attention span, your memory, you can feel more angry and irritable and depressed. So it's always worth looking with depression at nutrition first. And so the little mast cells are found in the mucosal surfaces in your body, like particularly your gut and your lungs. So your gut, they reckon, is one of the first places to signal dehydration. And They're found in the skin as well and around your blood vessels, anywhere that's slightly moist, really. And the mast cells are what produce our histamines. So if we have a look at the effect of histamines, they can contribute to an asthmatic state because they make your bronchial tubes constricting. And the reason for that is to reduce water loss from the lungs. They increase peristalsis in the gut, and peristalsis is the muscular contractions that wring your feces out. So you've got your gut is really like a muscle, huge section of muscles from beginning to end, sort of 30 foot of tubing, muscular tubing, and it's wringing out the feces and making sure that you wring out as much water as possible before the feces leave. And of course, that can contribute to constipation, which means that you're holding waste in the body. So another sign of histamine activity, we've said about asthma and depression, things like allergies, such as your hay fever. Again, you can get allergic asthma as well. And pain in the body can be a histamine reaction because of the inflammatory response. And all of it is treated as a disease. I would call it dis-ease. And so it's treated with things like antihistamines or painkillers. But what happens, unfortunately, when you're not drinking enough water, your body's signal that you're thirsty switches off. And we're going to I'll have a look at that in a little bit, because we're going to have a look at what happens, because you flick into a blood sugar response, and the body responds as though you're hungry, but in actual fact, you're thirsty. And so looking at the body fluids, your blood is 55% blood plasma, which is the clear part in the test tube if you see blood separate out. And your blood plasma then is between 83 to 92% water. So huge amount of water just in your blood. So then if you look at your circulatory system, Feridun Batmanghelidj, I've pinched some pictures from him because they're so lovely. He discusses how when you're chronically dehydrated, you lose percentages of water from certain places. So 66% of the water that you lose is held in your cells. Then you've got a watery fluid bathing the cells, and 26% of the water loss is from there. But then you've also got tiny little capillaries at the end of your circulation. You've got all the big blood vessels, and then your arteries, your veins, and then the tiny little capillaries that feed all of your tissues. About 8% water is lost from that tiny vascular bed in your tissues. And what happens is that the tiny little blood vessels close up to compensate for the water loss in your blood. And when those tiny little capillaries shut down, what happens then is that you get a raise in blood pressure. So you get hypertension. And I'm just going to nip out for a minute and see if I... Oh, no, I can't, can I? I was just going to see if Anne... I'll text her. See if she's got lost the link. So sorry, flicked on. So then you've got an increase in blood pressure, and one of the first places to start with blood sugar issues is to look at, with blood pressure issues, is to look at hydration, because that will make a difference. There's lots of other factors as well, unfortunately, but that will also help. Oops, I'm going backwards. Just thinking about your muscles, they are 79% water. And so for good muscle recovery after exercise, they reckon that we need an extra pinter or an extra 500 ml of water, just to keep them nicely hydrated. And of course, you don't want to be aching the next day after exercise. So our lungs are about 83% water, and we've seen the role of water in breathing. Water helps us transport oxygen around the body. And so keeping the lungs hydrated also helps avoid the histamine production that can contribute to asthma, or even just a tightening of the breathing. You know, we might not be diagnosed as asthma, but we might sometimes feel that our breathing is a little bit tight, and it can be contributed to by hydration. And so we were saying that that oxygen is traveling around really in the watery fluid that is your blood. And there's so much water in it that is carrying our oxygen to our cells and bringing our carbon dioxide away and back to the lungs. So our kidneys are really, the kidneys and bladder are, well, they belong to the water element in Chinese 5 elements. And if you can imagine, the Chinese 5 elements is relating each of our organ systems to an element. Kidneys and bladder are a water element, and they are our water organ because they literally filter the water and electrolytes in our body. And then we've got body temperature and blood sugar. So partly your body temperature is regulated by the liver, but of course it distributes any heat via your blood. And so if your liver is trying to displace some of the heat that's being produced while it's cleaning up your blood, it will distribute that. The blood will pick up the heat along with everything else it's carrying, and that's when we might start to feel slightly warm, you know, when we're not expecting to do so. And also, we were saying about blood sugar a few minutes ago. If you think about your cells, normally you would want to be able to access some sugar because that's where it's stored, from your muscle cells, from your liver cells, from your fat tissue, and bring that into the bloodstream for use for energy. But if your blood is, you know, sorry, if your body fluids and your blood are not well hydrated, you're going to have difficulty getting the sugar out of the cells because the concentration gradient between all those body fluids is too similar when you're dehydrated, and you can't crack the sugar out. So one really efficient way of starting to help blood sugar maintenance and get less cravings is to drink more water. And then thinking about nutrients and waste transportation, basically your blood picks up nutrients from your digestion and carries them to the cells. And inside your cells, you've got tiny little organelles, like we said last week. Some of them create energy, some of them are to clear waste from the cells. Lysosomes munch up waste from the cells, package it up, kick it out of the cell, into the body fluids, your lymph, then your blood, and it's carried away basically on the water in your lymph, in your blood. And it's a really important transportation mechanism, is water. So then also, Pat Mengele, a bit more of his story. One of the first people that he was brought had acid reflux pain. And Pat Mengele had nothing else to give him. So he gave him a glass of water, and then he gave him another glass of water to drink his way through. And within 20 minutes, he noticed, of drinking the first glass of water, the man's heartburn had gone. And he gradually worked his way through 3,000 prisoners with heartburn, dyspeptic pain, and associated problems or digestive symptoms, and successfully cured them of their digestive problems with water alone. And the difficult thing is that if the dehydration continues and the acid reflux or heartburn or dyspepsia continues, it can lead to ulceration of the gut, of the stomach, and even then to cancer. So it's really important to keep the digestion well hydrated. And the stomach is amazing because I don't know if you can see the lining around the stomach there, but at the bottom it describes what's happening, because that lining of your stomach is producing a bicarbonate layer that coats itself and stops the acids that you also produce in the stomach from damaging the stomach lining. And so the amazing thing is that all the time that you're eating and your stomach is digesting food, it's producing an alkaline environment that is stopping the acids it's producing damaging the stomach lining, because the stomach produces an acid level of about a pH of 2, which is really quite uncomfortable for the lining of your digestive tract. But your stomach is the only organ that does that. So once it starts to leave the stomach and go into your small intestine, that's when your bile with pancreatic juices and bile will very quickly neutralize, so you don't burn your small intestine. So digestion needs huge amounts of water. The stomach relies on that mucus lining to shield it, but that alkaline solution that lines the cells stops the acid breaking through that mucus lining. So if you've got too little mucus, the acid can penetrate, and that's when people get pain. So a great thing to do is drink, maybe if you definitely haven't drunk any water, to maybe drink a half a pint half an hour before your meal, because you'll prepare, each time you drink water, you are preparing your body to digest food. And your cells also use water. So as the water comes through the cell membrane, you've got osmosis again, because you've got this osmotic or diffusion where your cells are passing through, and as it passes through, it generates an electrical charge, if you like, that is used to help you manufacture ATP and GTP in your cells, which are energy sources for the inside of your cells, and ultimately helping you to feel energetic. And so dehydration has a huge, that 66% water loss has a huge effect on cell function, which is why, one of the reasons why people feel so tired when they don't drink any water. And dehydration obviously can even bump your cells off because they haven't got enough water to clean up, they haven't got enough water to transport oxygen in, they haven't and nutrients, they haven't got enough water to generate that electricity that will help them make energy. And that was a little mitochondria there that from inside the cell, another organ from inside the cell. So water also protects your organs and your joints because they're bathed in a lovely mucosa. I don't know if any of you have ever watched operations on the telly, but you can see that the internal mucosa is very water rich. It's very sloppy, really, sort of not slimy, but just all those lovely goblet cells in your internal mucosa producing a watery fluid that keeps everything moist and stops it from drying out, because otherwise you're going to desiccate and nothing will work. Sorry, it sounds a bit grim, doesn't it? So then you've got your bones. We're going to look at those later. They're not just calcium, they've got other minerals in them as well, but they also need a plentiful water supply, and partly because each of the joints have a sort of water around them, and particularly the fifth lumbar disc, 75% of the weight of your upper body is supported by a water core around your fifth lumbar disc. So it's why if people are dehydrated, you know, one of the first complaints they can get is lower back pain, because it's only the remaining 25% that is supported by the muscle fibers around your spine. But if you can imagine, your muscles, if they're well hydrated, will hold your bones in the right place. And so that's really what your muscles are for, to hold your bones in the right position. So if your muscles are dehydrated, they're not going to be holding the muscles in the right place. And this is why, you know, if people exercise and then don't stay hydrated, they can get not only muscular pain, but also joint pain. And there's a diagram, Batman-Gellish diagram there of the fifth lumbar disc, and also a picture I've pinched from him of a joint. I think it's the knee joint. Oh, there we go. There's, oops, there's Anne. Hi, Anne. She made it in.
Does she
Hi,
think
Anne.
does she think it's 7:30?
Hi, Anne.
I'm always, well, I dialed into Friday rather than Thursday.
Oh.
I realised the mistake.
Whoopsie.
I have been swimming. I have been to Douglas to my daughters, and I have been swimming, and I think I'm shattered. So that's my excuse anyway.
Right. Well, it's good to see you anyway.
See you, Anne.
So then you've got a comparison between a joint that's well hydrated on the right as opposed to a dehydrated joint on the left, and you can see how when the joint is dehydrated, you've got an inflamed joint capsule oozing serum and white cells into the joint. And also because of that lack of fluid between the two joints, you start to get damaged cartilage exposing the bone. And the other thing is that, as he says, when you've got joint movement causing a vacuum to be created in the joint space, ideally, if the bones are well hydrated, the water will be pulled through the bone and the cartilage into the joint cavity. But if it's not there, then it can't happen. So this is why it's so important to keep the joints well hydrated too. Then just thinking about body fluids, your digestion pause a huge amount of water onto all of your food in order to break it down. So in your saliva, you've got, saliva is just watery fluids plus starch digesting enzymes. You've got your esophagus getting the food down to your stomach in 8 seconds. And it's all the goblet cells in your esophagus producing watery fluid to get it down to the stomach. You've got your acids. We've already talked about the acids in the stomach. You've got bile, which is 95% water, pancreatic juices containing water, neutralizing and alkalizing the partly digested food coming out of the stomach so it can go through the small intestine. And then it's only when it gets to the large intestine that you start to wring out and get a bit of water back. And then, of course, urine should be nicely hydrated, so it's not really concentrated. And feces needs water for you to be able to pass it easily. So let's have a look. Hydrolysis is basically the breakdown of a chemical compound in the body. And partly you use enzymes to do that. But your enzymes will not function well where you're dehydrated. And just as an example, iodine has a very narrow band of available digestive enzymes. Those enzymes need a particular pH to work in. And so if your pH is very, too acid because you can't alkalize it because you haven't got enough water, then those enzymes are not going to function well and you won't be absorbing enough of what you need. So then just thinking about the lymphatic system, over 90% water, and of course part of our immune system. So the more dehydrated we are, the more likely we are to have a cold or a flu. And like we were saying last week about, stress causing that dehydration, then this is one of the reasons why our body will need to clear waste via the mucous membranes in the respiratory system. And there's just a little look there of, when your lymph functions, when your lymph system is functioning really well, then there's going to be the good guys sat there waiting for anything, that needs sorting out, because they've got plenty of hydration to work with. So with perspiration, whether it's through exercise or just because it's a hot day, your skin loses a huge amount of water, and is a great way for the body to clean itself up. So the Chinese, I think we said last week, call the skin your third lung or your third kidney, and the water loss from that is really important to replace, particularly as we said, pinter for every hour of exercise. Now your nervous system, like the bone, also has water channels in each of your nerves, and water helps transport nutrients along the nerves. So calcium relaxes your nerves and sodium tenses your nerves. And so at every stage, in order to transport messages along the nerve, those messages transport via water. And if we don't have that available, it can result in painful nerves. Now, if the nervous system is particularly affected and dehydration is very severe, then people can actually start to feel very anxious. And so kind of the symptoms of, like panic attacks, that kind of thing, are really a sign that the dehydration has really reached the nervous system. So every body system needing water. Now, whether this, I think it's pretty much agreeing with what I was saying, maybe not on the kidneys and the lungs. Anyway, so signs of dehydration. If you've got a dry mouth, really, that is the last outward sign. She says, stopping gabbing and having a swig. Because your cells are already dehydrated. And so in a state of severe dehydration, the urine can literally turn orange, and it would probably be quite strong smelling. I've only ever seen that when I've been visiting family in hospital, and they've got one of the catheters on with the bag, and have just had an operation or something, and been horrified to note that it's usually orange, despite the fact that they're surrounded by jugs of water. So then somewhat dehydrated tends to be yellow. And thinking about the qualities of water, it is an amazing substance because it can either be liquid, which is how we usually take it in, but it can also be gas, as steam once it comes off, if it's got very warm. And of course, sweat is like a form of steam, isn't it? Or it can be solid, so it can actually freeze. It really is an amazing substance, and very, very cleansing. And the Chinese would see it from a very philosophical point of view as being there as a force of flow in the body, to help drive, to help motivation. Now, also, if you think about nerves and you think about the nervous system and neurotransmitters being able to dock into your nerve cells, then it enables us to think, and helps us create an alkaline environment in the body, because the more dehydrated we are, the more acidic the internal environment will be, because it's more concentrated. And really then, when we are more hydrated, we have an ability to choose a response. The body has an ability to choose its responses more easily in a hydrated state, but also spiritually, we can be more connected because we can think more clearly, and allow ourselves a bit of space to consider, and allow any perhaps external connections to come through from the greater, what would you call it, powers that be, because our cell community can stay connected. And so we said last week that the more dehydrated we are, the more stressed we are. The more stressed we are, the more dehydrated we are. And the more cortisol that we start to produce. But when we're dehydrated, this is just a small section of what a cell membrane looks like, and it's really 2D. And so in 3D, that would be right round your cell, and you've got phospholipids, which are a phosphorus head and a lipid tail, and they bond end to end with each other, almost like a tuning fork, really, going together. And your cell membrane is just like a layer of them right the way round. But you also have about 50% cholesterol in the cell membrane, and the cholesterol is just like a hard, waxy fat that bungs up the holes in the cell membrane. And so if you can imagine, if you're getting up to a 66% water loss from the cell, what the cell does to protect itself is it starts to pull cholesterol into its cell membrane. And that's to prevent dehydration or water loss from the cell. And so cholesterol, a really good starting point for raised cholesterol is to increase water intake. And it's not that you're eating too much cholesterol, but we'll come back to cholesterol because it's there's so much more that you can do nutritionally than just worry about what's coming in the diet, which sounds silly, I know, but I'll come back to that. So then in normal circumstances, we have about a 2.8 litre water loss from the body, 1.5 through urine, 7.5 through the skin, 750 through the skin, 400 ml through the breath, and 150 ml from feces. And of course, with menstruation, unfortunately, I haven't got a statistic for you on that, but if we're still menstruating, then we also lose water there. And so you can get about 1.3 litres daily from metabolising food, and that's assuming, though, that the food has water in it itself. So if the diet is very dry, you know, something like cornflakes and milk for breakfast, pizza for lunch, chicken and chips for dinner, there's not going to be a lot of water coming in from the food. And so even so, that leaves the average person short by about 1.5 litres a day. So getting water from your food is a lovely way of bringing it in the body because it's slow water. As the watery foods pass through, say like it's slices of cucumber, you're going to get this lovely slow water uptake from the body. And the thing about water, if you're only just starting to drink it, is that you can feel a little bit like a hanging basket looks when you've been away for a 2-week holiday and you get back and it's dried out completely and the water just goes straight through. And so when you start to drip water in, you can find that it will go straight through, but gradually you will start to feel more, especially if you're dripping it in, as though you're holding more of it there, because it gives the kidneys a chance to use it more efficiently if you drip it in slowly. And just a quick look at what types of water are good to drink. We've already mentioned about spring water because there's a vortex created. But if you have good borehole water where you are, then you should be in a good position. We're really lucky that Aquath water comes from a borehole. Chlorinated water, that is sometimes used to clean the water, not so good. For example, they reckon it can cause miscarriage. So if you're able to filter your water in that instance, even with a Brita filter, it can make an enormous difference. And there are other filters on the market and whole house filters. And if you're buying water, ideally to buy it packed in a glass bottle rather than a plastic one. Just to mention PyMag by Nikon, it's a well-reputed water technology system and uses a magnetic technology to clean up and impart minerals to the water. So it is more cost effective than if you prefer to buy water because you can't access such good water from the tap. Just some comments about how to drink water effectively. If you want a pint of warm water between meals, or room temperature is great too. Ideally to get your 8 half-pint glasses at least in per day if you can. And the other thing is to drip it in because, as we were saying, you will get more from it. Your body can take it on board slowly, because if you drink a pint of water all at once, what will tend to happen is that you'll absorb it, it'll be taken to the kidneys in a lump, and it just goes straight back out again. So that's not, it's not that that's not useful, but it's not as useful as dripping it in. And of course, that isn't the only thing that holds water in the body. And when we come to our essential fats, we'll have a look at what holds water in the body really well. The other thing to do is wake up and have a pinter. And that is the only time I really recommend having a pint of water, because when you wake up, your body is at its most dry, and you'll generally find that at that point, you take on board the water really efficiently and get it to where it's needed for further cleansing from the dry spell overnight. And so great to, if you've not been drinking any water at all, just start with a half pint and build your way up to a pinter. And if you drink it warm, it will be absorbed very quickly and get to where it's needed. And people often find that they can feel a lot more refreshed within 20 minutes of drinking a pint of water than they do if they have a cup of tea or coffee, because the tea or coffee tends to hit the adrenal glands, and it's more of a jump start than a nice gradual hydrated wake up. And so then if you want to keep your caffeine in, have the water first and then have the caffeine. It's also good to drink water away from food so that you're not diluting the level of acid that your stomach has chosen to pour onto that food, unless you're in pain. And if you're in pain because you've got acid reflux, then do start sipping water. So having a look at diuretics, tea, black tea, takes its own volume of water to process. Green tea is about 50% the amount of caffeine, and so it takes only half of its own volume to process. If you've got a cup of coffee, it entirely depends what type of coffee. If it's instant coffee, it'll take about twice as much water for you to process the caffeine from it. If you have got filter coffee, it takes about 4 times the amount of coffee, water to digest that amount of caffeine, or to process it through the liver, detox that caffeine out. And so a Starbucks with these, now what do they call them? Espresso type, where people say, oh, I'll have 4 lots of whatever it is, can take up to 32 times your own volume of water to process, because its own volume of water to process, because it's such a concentrated amount of caffeine. So a bit eye-watering really, and very drying. And then chocolate, as far as I know, it's not caffeinated. Well, I do know it's not caffeinated. Sorry, that wasn't what I was going to say. But it is the same chemical family. And so it does have a similar diuretic effect. But it is less than tea and coffee. So you're probably, but then it depends on the amount of cocoa. So somewhere, between green tea and tea. And then you've got Coke, which is about 2/3 the amount of caffeine of tea. And so it takes about 2/3 of the volume of it that you drink in order to process the amount of water. With alcohol, it takes about 4 times its own volume to process. So ideally, for every glass of wine, there should be 4 glasses of water, for example. So there's a guy called Stephen Cheniska who researched the effects of caffeine for 10 years. And he found that it had really a negative effect on every single body system. So when we drink caffeine, he says it's like we're putting the body into a state of war zone, because he said you're putting it onto a constant state of alert each time that we have a caffeinated drink. Firstly, it stimulates the release of cortisol from the adrenals, so you put your body into fight and flight. And eventually, the effects of doing that mean that you can become adrenally exhausted. And that can lead to, with the dehydration, anxiety, mood swings, irritability, depression. He found that it severely disturbs sleep. And certainly a lot of people have found that their sleep improves enormously just by cutting back or giving up caffeine. And I once had somebody come who was drinking 24 cups of coffee a day several years ago. And to my astonishment, it's the only person that's ever come that's been recommended by a doctor. Otherwise, I'd never had another recommendation for a GP. And very quickly, just from taking the case, because the problem was that this person couldn't sleep, I was able to suggest that if they would cut back their caffeine intake, they would sleep a lot better. And by the following week when I saw them, because that's actually for reflexology, not nutrition, they'd actually cut back down to 4 and they were sleeping a lot better. So it was the reflexology that'd been recommended for sleep, but really it wasn't needed because just cutting back on the caffeine worked wonders. And so I'll let you read this. I think you're probably going to be able to get the gist of it, even though there's a bit of it knocked off. So another thing about coffee is they reckon that 5 cups can contribute to tachycardia, to racing heart. And certainly when it's mixed with alcohol or sugar, it can have really much greater effects in that direction. And so there's been some real unfortunate stories of young people killed by alcopops that are a mix of alcohol and caffeine, very damaging for the heart. So fizzy drinks, something like caffeine. You've not only got the caffeine in some drinks, obviously you've got the sugar, and probably about 1/4 of all drinks, beverages consumed are soda or fizzy pop. And unfortunately, the phosphorus in the fizzy drinks depletes the bones of calcium. So with alcohol, your liver can metabolize about 1 ounce an hour of alcohol. And so it's not an enormous amount. And what happens is that the alcohol is metabolized by the liver and it converts into acetic acid, which then converts into carbon dioxide and water, which is how you excrete it from the body. And calories are generated by, in the process of doing that. So, but if it's not converted because the liver can't keep up, this is when people start to feel drunk. So they get a rapid blood flow to the skin, face, neck and chest, and start to go very pink, and can then start to feel later headache, nausea and drowsiness, because the liver simply hasn't managed to keep up. But one of the reasons it's so pleasurable is because it stimulates the brain's pleasure center that produces dopamine, and dopamine is a neurotransmitter that gives feelings of pleasure and helps normally get up and go, which is perhaps why some people will actually get on the dance floor when they've had a drink. So then, as it says, 20% of that is absorbed by the stomach, 80% in the small intestine. So you get some absorbed more quickly, and then some absorbed more slowly as it passes through the small intestine. But it can, in menopause, be a definite hot sweat or night sweat contributor. And some people have found that just cutting the alcohol out can reduce that almost to nothing, if not nothing. So your body constitutes a high percentage of water, and really we need water to survive, even over above food. And the consequences of not having it can lead to really quite serious illness. And Batman-Galish cites angina pain, arthritic pain, dyspepsia, obviously we've already spoken about, hypertension, blood pressure, hyperpressure. So obviously diuretics contribute to a loss, and the more dehydrated we become, the more likely we are to misplace it, because our body is trying to soak up acids, for example, and keep them away from the main organs. So usually swelling in the lymph is a sign that your body's trying to hold wastes away from the main organs. So just looking at hydration, it's great to get it not only through drinking water, but through food, because food passes through so much more slowly and gives you the chance, for your digestive system to go, like we were saying, slurping your water in steady gulps and dripping it in. Your food does that if it's hydrated naturally. And so some water-rich breakfasts are things like soaking your oats overnight when you're going to eat them. If you use them for porridge, put your half a mug of oats in the pan, put a full mug of water on top of them, leave them to soak overnight. It will cook to quite a creamy textured porridge. I'm not promising you it will be creamy tasting, but the texture is lovely and soft and creamy because the fibre in the oats is so plumped up and swollen with water. And then if you want to, you can add a little bit of a milk of some kind, of a yogurt, and some fruit. And then the typical Bircher Benner muesli used to be soaked, your overnight oats, it's sometimes called, used to be soaked in water or fruit juice. It's much better if you can soak it in water. And if you're going to have dried fruit with it, soak those overnight in the oats as well. And maybe even soak almonds or other nuts that you like, walnuts. Soak dried fruit. If you snip up an apricot into small pieces, or you put some sultanas and raisins in, get enough water over them to soak them and hydrate those as well, because when they're hydrated, they're not as sugary and they're not going to raise your blood sugar as much. And also, anytime you soak grains, you start to break down the phytates in them that will help you absorb more nutrients from them. So oats have a nice amount of zinc in them, and you'll be able to absorb more of that from the oats. So then other things that you can do to support digestion, and I would suggest getting water in there first, 4 pints of water, are to use for the gut, things like soaked linseeds. So if you soak golden linseeds for 8 to 12 hours, they act like a little loofah and a little sponge, water holding sponge in the gut, which means that you can again take water up from them while they pass through the gut. So you do see them again, they don't get digested, they go straight through. And they can be a good remedy if there's any constipation. Linseed tea, again, really, really hydrated. You would soak 2 tablespoons of linseeds in a litre of boiling water for 8 to 12 hours, and then simmer it gently for an hour, and then strain it and use it as a tea that you dilute. So you put about 1/3 of the linseed tea in the mug and then pour on boiling water. And it's a very comforting, very hydrating drink, and absolutely amazing if you are really stressed, because it's really supportive for the kidneys and hydration, and reducing anxiety. Really does switch off anxiety alert, dehydration alert. And if you can also imagine, it helps any of your body fluids hydrate, but particularly helps bile flow from the liver, which again can also contribute to helping things like constipation from dryness and dehydration and stress. And so other drinks that don't necessarily give water but will not take water from you are things like your herb teas, and your fruit teas, your the one I was thinking of was something like rhubarb tea, and that does depend on the tea actually, because nettle tea is somewhat diuretic, but it has a different effect in the kidneys than what caffeine would do. Switch that off.
It's very good, Susie.
Uh,
Thank
drink more.
you.
Yeah, drink more.
Any questions?
Leave the chocolate out.
Oh,
Have
sorry.
a carrot instead.
yeah.
If you drink bottled water, Susie, you mentioned from a glass bottle. Are there any particular brands or anything that you would recommend if you can't get glass bottled water?
Yes, there is one, isn't it? Is it the Buxton water that they pop into glass? I'm pretty sure that one. But the other thing to do is to save a glass bottle and fill that, keep refilling it with filtered water, rather than refilling a plastic bottle if you can. I know they're heavier to carry around, but there's also now so many stainless steel bottles and you can get 500 ml stainless steel bottles that will fit in a handbag. Well, they will if you've got a decent sized handbag.
My handbag's already so full I can never find anything in it.
Empty everything out and put your
No,
personal water in.
dear. Terrible.
Yeah.
Bare knickers. And when you get to my age, you see.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
But you have to be careful, Susie, because they had, it looked like stainless steel water thing from Aldi years ago, and it was aluminium. Well, that's the last thing you want to be drinking out of. Got to make sure it is stainless steel.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, there are some really good ones out there now, aren't there? So yes, but absolutely. There's also a bit of a thing about drinking out of a copper bottle, and how healthy that is. But I wouldn't particularly recommend that, because you need to be careful that your copper doesn't displace your zinc. So I'm always a bit wary of that one. Any other questions about body conditions and water? If you get a chance to read Stephen Cheniska's book called, I think it's called Caffeine Blues.
Sorry, Stephen
Cheniska. He
Oh.
will relate CHERNISKE and he relates pretty much, well, he can probably give him a body system and he can relate it to a problem that's been caused by caffeine.
So what was it called? Caffeine
Blues.
Caffeine Blues. I've just been talking to my son-in-law, who's a great caffeine person, and he's worried about his cholesterol. And I'm sure that caffeine's probably to do with this. So I might get him that book, Caffeine Blues.
Well, actually, Batman Gelish's would be better, because Batman Gelish covers dehydration and cholesterol.
Batman
Gelish. Batman, as in
on our group thing.
How does the music go?
Batman as in Batman.
Yeah,
what was it,
and then
the name?
Gel, GEL, and then LIDH. I think that's how you spell it.
LIDH.
Put it on our WhatsApp group. Put those two.
Oh yes, that's a good idea. Yes.
On the WhatsApp
yes,
group.
I will. Yes.
I'm not in the WhatsApp group. What was the name of it again? Sorry.
It was Your Body's Many Cries for Water.
Your Body Many Cries for Water.
So Batman Gelish does mention the effects of caffeine, and he also discusses cholesterol at length.
Cries for Water.
And who's that by, Susie, again?
Batman Gelish.
Batman Gelish.
Your Body Many Cries for Water, right? I'll get him that, because he doesn't want to go on cholesterol drugs, but his cholesterol's too high, you know, but I know he loves his caffeine. Anyway, I'll give him the book, and then it's up to him. You've got to be very careful, haven't you, really?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Is he a sportsman at all?
Yes, very much so.
Because cholesterol weakens the muscles. Cholesterol medication weakens the muscles.
Yeah.
And you know, my father-in-law started taking them years ago, and he could not open a jar of jam a while after taking them. He really found it very dispiriting.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's amazing. They're determined, aren't they, to get you on all this medication? You know?
I think that's one of the biggest prescriptions that are written is cholesterol.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a real money spinner. I'm not sure if it is. Some drugs, the GPs get a bonus if they get like 90% of their herd of a certain age on a particular drug.
I've had another phone call tonight.
Have you?
Yes, inviting me to make my appointment for my vaccination.
Right.
Oh, they're persistent, aren't they?
Yeah, I've had a letter today, Anne, from the doctor.
Yeah.
Answering my questions, and
good.
It can cause what is it?
Anaphylactic shock.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you see, my daughter's had anaphylactic shock. She's on an EpiPen, so they wouldn't do her anyway. But I've had reactions with vaccines. I had a really bad one with smallpox. I was in sick bay at college for about a week, and I told my friend who lived in the Isle of Man when I came home from college, and she never had the smallpox vaccine because she was so frightened.
My mother actually chose for us as children not to have it because she didn't want us to be scarred. Which is quite an advantage, really, when I think about it.
Yeah. Well, we didn't have as many, did we, in our day?
No.
I mean, my first vaccine was when I was 15. I had the polio, and that was okay. But then the second was the smallpox, and that was really bad,
Yes.
really bad. And then I lived in Africa, you know, and I had to have these vaccines, but every time I had an allergic reaction. And it was one of the reasons we came home, actually, because the Italian doctor out there said, you know, I don't think you should have any more, but you've got to have them to travel into the country. So we came home then. And I haven't had a vaccine now for 30 years, you know.
Good for you.
Yeah. Well, I had reasons, you know, because of the reaction.
Yes.
What reason did you give, Jean, when they rang you for the vaccination?
Sorry.
No, Jean, what reason did Jean give for declining the vaccination?
I didn't catch what you're
Did you hear that,
saying.
Jean? What reason did you give for declining the vaccine this evening?
Oh, I didn't answer the telephone call.
Oh.
I knew it was from the doctor because it was programmed into my phone, but I need to ring because I had an email, then I had a telephone call, then I had a letter, and I've had another telephone call tonight. But I wrote a letter to the doctor at the end of, on the 26th of January, asking 4 questions, and I got the answer came today with what I already knew, but I wanted it in writing from the doctor with a signature. And these were the questions. I would like to ask if the vaccine has MRC5 in it. No, it doesn't. Is there a possibility of electrogenic reaction? Yes, there is. That's my reason for not doing it.
Sorry, what was that? The second?
Iatrogenic reaction.
Yeah.
And what is that?
It's iatrogenic reactions are reactions to drugs. And they cause actually an enormous amount of illness. Yeah, and so it's like a side effect really, but sometimes it can be a real huge, you know, like an anaphylactic shock, for example.
Yeah. Well, I see in the Mail about 10 days ago, there was a doctor in New York who believed in vaccines.
Frozen, Susie.
And he had the vaccine and he died within 2 weeks.
You're frozen, Susie. You froze.
No, I think it might be Eugene that's frozen.
Oh, that's
I'm so happy to get this letter. I was on a Zoom with a craft group from church this afternoon, and they've all had theirs, or they're having theirs. And what about you, Jean? I said, well, I've actually had a letter from the doctor today recommended I don't have it for health reasons.
Good for you.
Nice.
Can we have a copy of your letter that you sent to your doctor, Jean, please?
Yes, if you give
We definitely need a copy of your letter.
If you put your email into the WhatsApp group, I don't know, I've got your email. Susie gives me your email address. I've actually sent it to a lady that's on the Friday evening group. Yeah, if I can have your email address, you're more than welcome to the
I'm
letter.
not on WhatsApp, but Susie could give you my email. That would be lovely if you could.
Oh yeah.
Send it me on the ordinary email, because I don't have WhatsApp, you see.
But I wrote out a box. I don't know whether you can see it, for him, the doctor, to tick yes or no.
Oh,
And
you've been very industrious.
And to sign at the bottom.
Yeah. You will start a revolution.
Yeah.
He was really obedient as well, wasn't he? Really, he did sign the bottom.
Yes, he signed it. Yes.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
Let me have your email address on the WhatsApp group, and I'll do it out tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
I'm stirring it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a bit like Susie. I don't like people being ill, but there's so many people. Well, most of the groups that I'm in are all can't wait to have it, and they've had it, and they're so happy that they've been invited. And I'm thinking, I don't want to know.
No, I wouldn't touch it. I think the thing is to, to do what Susie said and keep yourself as healthy as possible, really. With food
well, because I've worked with Susie for 15 years, my immune system is really good. And I took my, I've got a little machine to put on my finger, and I can tell my oxygen levels, and they're 99% this morning. I think I'm quite happy with 99%.
Where did you get the little machine?
On the internet. It tells you your pulse and your
Oxygen saturation.
oxygen levels.
Is it a hypoxic meter or something? I can't remember what they're called.
I'll have to find the little piece of paper, Susie.
Yeah.
I got it because my thyroid stops and starts, although it hasn't stopped for a long time. But when my pulse goes down, then I know that I need to test whether I need my thyroid. But I don't need, at the moment, my thyroid's been working for months now. I've not had a problem.
Sex.
No. So,
it's really interesting that, because I read recently, well, probably a couple of months ago, that as you get older, your oxygen levels can go down to about 95%.
right.
So a 99% oxygen rate is good.
But the exercises I've been doing for my fall that my niece has given me, the physio to get better, is you've got to do these deep breathing things. So I've been practicing proper breathing. I'm not a very good breather. I'm a shallow breather. So
I think we're all shallow breathers.
yeah, well, we're not taught to breathe properly, are we? It just happens naturally, and then when you think about it.
Anything else you'd like to ask about water?
Well, it seems to be the big key, doesn't it, really?
It's a great...
and you know what, honestly, this morning I was great on water, and I was great when I had my lunch, and then I went off to my daughter's and I took some water with me. Went up to the pool, we were all busy talking, and honestly, I didn't drink any water. And when I came in, I knew I didn't come in till about 6 o'clock. And, as soon as I've drunk some water, and I actually had some linseed tea, I just began to feel better. Definitely, we definitely need it. And,
I can give you my email address now, all of you.
Give me your email address.
Right. As you see, I'm Jean Carlisle, but it's all lowercase. Jean.Carlisle.
Hang on.
It's, if you see
your name's disappeared. Oh, it's come back again now.
All right. Jean.Carlisle at NTL.
Jean, and there's a dot after the Jean.
Yes.
Yeah.
Carlisle.
Jean.Carlisle.
As in the city, at NTL World.
L.
At NTL. It was what Virgin, NTL.
Yeah. NTL, yeah. World.com. World.com. I'll
Oh,
take
Sue,
that. So
Sue-
it's Jean,
yeah,
full
Susie
stop,
put it up. Oh,
Carlisle at
Yeah.
ntlworld.com.
yes, that's it.
That's
So
fine.
send-
Well, I'll
just
send
send,
you an email in the morning.
yes, yes, and you'll
Yeah.
you'll get a copy of the letter back,
That'd be great. That'd be
and
great.
then
We'll
you
keep in
can
touch.
you can well, keep, you can just copy it. There's no
Yeah.
copyright on it.
Yeah,
It's,
that'd be great.
it's,
And
it's
that was he's filled in the letter that you sent to him, is it?
well, I sent a letter, and then I sent a copy for him to sign, and I attached it to it. But he's actually signed the letter that I've sent.
Sent.
They've
Yeah.
actually, it says on the top, scanned and completed. So they've got a copy of it on my records.
Oh, well,
But
if you could send me them both, and then that gives me an idea what to
Yeah,
do.
well,
I'll
you can
write
have
to my
both,
doctor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
But
we're
I-
a small community, and honest to God,
No.
I'm thinking I'm in a choir, I'm in a friendship group, and I thought, if they're going to be saying, well, why aren't you getting it? It is difficult.
Well, it's when it comes back, and when it's about the lactogenic reaction, and he's ticked the box, yes, that's
Yeah.
your reason for getting
Yeah.
it. It's you're recommended. He recommends you don't have it for health reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, well, I'll have to start on that course now. Well, they're vaccinating here very slowly, because
Oh,
they're doing it after 3 weeks, as the original Pfizer one. It's the Pfizer one they've got. So they want to make sure that they've got enough vaccines to give the first people.
Nice.
So, so I've only just received a letter asking me to get in touch with them and say whether I'm willing, and to sign the consent form and all this, so.
See, there's no consent form here.
Isn't there? Oh, right.
No, he's put, no, there isn't. Is there
Yeah.
an informed consent form for COVID vaccine? And he's put no.
Well, there is over here. They're obviously covering their back over here. They're a bit more cautious, you see. I don't want to end up with everybody claiming off them,
Well, you can't claim off of the man.
No.
They've put a thing on, haven't they? That
Yeah,
you can't claim. No,
September. Yes,
that's a big warning to me. If you can't put a claim in.
yeah.
Bad, isn't it? Bad.
Mm.
I don't know. It's a real worry, isn't it? If we worry about the people, like the children, really, because they're wanting to vaccinate everybody, aren't they?
Well, we just have a sick world, aren't we?
I'm afraid so.
Mm.
Well, that's the thing. I was a teacher, and honestly, in the 1960s, I don't remember anybody with autism. But then there was hardly any vaccines then. I mean, they just come in, didn't they, in the 60s? They just really started to get popular, and I just think, and I'd never heard of polymyalgia or fibromyalgia, and I just wonder where they've come from, Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much, Jean, for that. You've given me hope.
Thank you.
I've got a big wooden spoon.
Good. Anyway, you take care. Thank you very much, Susie. It's lovely.
Thank
Really
you.
enjoyed it.
Is everybody's times that they had last week still okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Oh, tomorrow night, Susie, is it all right if my daughter comes in to listen to the Alzheimer's?
yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm giving a talk on Alzheimer's tomorrow evening.
7:30, isn't
Anybody
it?
would like the link.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Oh, please share them. Yes, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
You can share it, Anne, rather than the two of you together.
Brilliant.
No.
I'll just share it. Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Okay.
great.
I'll see you tomorrow then, Anne and Susie. I don't know
Yes.
You will.
whether Deborah, Bridget and Liz.
Oh,
Okay.
Having swum up and down the pool, I'm going to go and lie on the couch now. Recover. Anyway, lovely to see you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
and
Bye.
Bye.
nothing else anybody wants to ask me.
No, thank
No.
you, Susie.
Thank you.
It's actually the drinking water while eating, because that's something I guess is from growing up. You know, you sort of always get out drinks. I don't know what the suggestion is there, because I know they drink a lot, but not having a glass of water with your dinner is kind of.
But it's half an hour before, Bridget, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
No,
Yes,
I know this, but I still keep doing that. We fill a jug
Oh
of water.
yeah, well, it's a habit, isn't it? You've been brought up with it. You know, it's breaking that habit.
Just those digestive juices. Yeah.
Yeah.
yes. Well, I mean, you're right. One thing to do is maybe put a jug of water out as everybody is getting to 20-30 minutes before eating, and see if you can persuade them to drink a little then.
Yeah.
But in terms of drinks on a table, then water is by far a better one to have than anything else.
Than a bottle of Coke.
Yeah, because but if you can, it's, I think trouble is that sometimes with children, I know my granddaughter does this, she'll kind of put too much in her mouth, and then she'll be chewing and chewing and chewing, and then she'll kind of pick up a glass of water, or she'll say, I need some water, rather, and then kind of wash it all down, and it's not really properly chewed. It's, I think when teenagers are eating very quickly, they can kind of neck it down with some water. But yes, in terms of other drinks, it is by far a better thing. But to see if we can get people to drink it beforehand and stop about 20-30 minutes before, and let the digestive system produce the water that's going to digest the meal. But I think sometimes people do naturally drink water with a meal because they feel a bit dry while they're eating.
Yeah, but it's something that's been set up. It's more of a habit, I think, really. I mean, you go to a restaurant where you go, it's kind of you order water for the table, and you know, so it's that thing that goes along with it. But yeah, it's just something to think. And I guess breakfast wise, you know, you were saying about soaking oats and, you know, whatever other grains, we've known that. And I guess your veg juices, and they're all adding water at that stage.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're having a veg juice, that's adding water. Certainly, you know, probably the most water rich thing.
So I guess if everything's soaked like chai and all the other bits, then it is.
And smoothie, I'm going to send out a smoothie recipe to try. And pardon?
Yes, a new breakfast. Right.
Yeah, I've got chia seeds in soak at the moment, ready to make a smoothie tomorrow morning.
Yeah, that's a lovely way.
I did that a lot earlier on, so they've had a good old soak.
Yeah, your tadpoles.
Yes.
Yeah, they're lovely and hydrated. Yeah.
Well, I think that's all I was. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Susie.
Susie, can I just ask you about your tomato soup recipe? The one with fennel. The one with fennel. If you can't get fennel, what would substitute fennel?
Celery.
All right.
Celery is a good flavoured substitute to use. And
would you roast that?
Roast that similarly. Yeah. Just sort of chop the head up and pop it in. You know, in chunks, so that it gets chance to be roasted like a fennel would. That's a really nice flavoursome one. That's the one that, oh God, the person I got the recipe from, Hugh Fernie Whittingstall, suggests. Yeah.
How
I
much
just had that for
celery?
lunch, actually.
What with celery?
Yeah, no, with fennel. A good.
Get fennel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sort of an average sized celery head, because he suggests 3 fennel, I think, in with the recipe. But I tend to be a bit stingy because they're quite expensive, so I only buy one. But it's still, you can still taste the fennel. It's so strong. It's lovely.
Mm.
Thank you.
But yeah, Abel and Cole do deliver to Aqua. So
I've put an order in already. We've spoken on Monday or Tuesday. I went, it's so easy.
Yeah.
So easy to order.
Yeah.
I've got my delivery coming on Monday.
That's great. Any other thoughts?
Not that I can think of, Susie, at the moment.
Okay.
Sorry, soup would be good, wouldn't it, for water?
Oh, it's lovely. Yeah. Really great way of getting some water in.
But not with bread.
Put some quinoa in with it, Deborah.
Yeah, or cannellini beans, did you say, Susie?
Cannellini beans, yeah, get a bit of protein, yeah. And your quinoa would give a bit of protein. And if you soak it and then cook it. In fact, I just tried a Fernley Whittingstall one recently that had quinoa in. It's a nice way of getting the protein in, which will keep the blood sugar steady. A little bit of extra bulk.
Would you send us some soup recipes?
Yeah, of course, with pleasure. Yeah. Yep, soup.
Thank you.
I will. Thank you. And next week, we'll be looking at reducing inflammation through diet, basically. And as a starting point.
So what was that, Susie?
Reducing inflammation through
Oh, right, yes. Yeah, don't have the vaccine.
Yes, that's one way. It's a hot topic at the moment.
Yeah, it's very hot.
Yeah. Well, I'll look forward to seeing you in your one-to-ones then. And if you've got any questions, please do pop them on the WhatsApp thread.
Yes. Then we can all learn from it, can't we?
Yeah, and I will do a Facebook page group as well, because I think Anne doesn't access the WhatsApp. So if you're able to transfer some recipes in there as well.
Yes. If you're looking at recipes, Susie, artichoke.
Oh, oh God, yeah. I've got a sticky note somewhere, Jean. It's here. It's right here. Yes, must get that. Sorry. Yeah.
I'll be throwing them out. See you tomorrow.
See you
soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, Liz. Bye.
Bye.
Thank
you. Bye,
Susie. Bye, Deborah.
Bye, Jean. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.